We're nearly at the end of the Premier League season, so now it's time to review the signings that were made. Using a tier list, I'll be ranking all Premier League teams on their transfer business. Firstly, I am very proud and happy to say that this video is sponsored by OneFootball, a fantastic app for your phone to browse the latest news, transfer news, live football scores and much more. One thing it's brilliant for is football stats, which is perfect for this kind of video. For example, we'll look at Arsenal first in alphabetical order. Thomas Partey was a new signing of theirs. And here on the app, as I go to Arsenal's profile, I can then look at all the Arsenal players. I can tap onto Thomas Partey, and from there I can look at the numbers from the whole Premier League season. For example, his defence here, 30 tackles won with a 47% success rate. His season has been on and off due to injury, but he's still been able to get 2 assists, a passing accuracy of 87% and 80 touches per match, showing that Thomas Partey is an influential player when he's on the pitch for Arsenal. And then in terms of the attack, well, he hasn't had any goals, as you can see here. So for all the football stats that I talk about in my videos, you can access all of them in the OneFootball app, and that is what it's great for. To be able to download OneFootball yourself, all you need to do is click the link in the description. So with that being said about Thomas Partey, he's been in and out of the team. Injuries have affected his season. As well as Thomas Partey, they brought in Gabriel and Willian in the summer, as well as then Odegaard in January. However, Thomas Partey in the midfield was their biggest signing. And looking back now, he probably hasn't had the biggest impact on the team. And neither have the rest of the players. So for Arsenal, I can only put them in average / need to see more. And as you can see, they are the 4 tiers we have for the video. The best business, good but not blown away, average, need to see more, and disappointing. So Arsenal are the first club into the average tier due to the players that they signed not having the biggest impact on their season. To the next club then, Aston Villa. I know a lot of people watching this will be interested to see where I've put Aston Villa. They signed Ollie Watkins, Matty Cash, Martinez as their goalkeeper, Traore and Barkley. Quite a few of you will know that I am a big fan of Ollie Watkins. When he signed this summer, the question was how many will he score? Well, at the moment he's scored 12 and there's still quite a lot of games remaining. He's the player who's hit the woodwork the most in the Premier League, so he's been very unlucky not to score a few more. So overall, looking back at the signing of Ollie Watkins, it has been a real success. They were lacking a focal point as the striker and a player to rely on to score the goals. They could rely on Grealish to get the creativity into the team, but not the goal scoring. Other additions have been fantastic as well. Matty Cash has been one of the best right backs in the Premier League this season, and Martinez in goal is a massive reason as to why Aston Villa haven't conceded as many goals. So the only tier that I can put Aston Villa in is the best business. They were really able to pick some really good players in Watkins, in Cash and Martinez, as well as Traore and Barkley, who have played their part throughout the season. With 30 games played, they've got 2 games in hand against some teams. They currently sit 11th in the league table, but they got themselves into a position in the league table where it looked like they could qualify for Europe. I'm not quite sure they can qualify now, however, the signings got them into that conversation in the first place. Now, I don't want to go into too much detail on every Premier League team, as we could be here for a while, so some of the teams I might go through a little bit quicker, like Brighton here. Brighton made some clever additions to their side with Veltman, Lallana and Welbeck, as well as the signing of younger players like Moda and Zakiri. Moda, who has played quite a few more games recently, as well as a very interesting January signing, Moises Caicedo. A lot of bigger clubs were interested in him. If Brighton were a bit higher in the league table, then maybe I'd put them a little higher in the tier list. For now though, I think I can only put them into average / need to see more. Brighton are on the same amount of points as they were after 31 games last season, so the signings haven't really had an impact on Brighton as a team. For Burnley, well, they were in a tough position and couldn't make any signings. They signed Dale Stephens and Will Norris, so I think this is quite obvious. They have to go into the bottom tier. Disappointing. However, I do hope for Sean Dyche's sake that the new owners can really help him in the transfer market. Chelsea did the biggest business last summer. They brought in Kai Havertz, Timo Werner, Ben Chilwell, Hakim Ziyech, Mendy, Sarr and Thiago Silva. Everybody saw this as, wow, Chelsea are really going for Manchester City and Liverpool to win the league this year. With these players that they signed and the players at the club already, that is really what I thought. The squad was good enough to compete. I don't know if I really thought they could win it, but the players are of that quality. When Timo Werner joined Chelsea last summer, we saw this as a signing where they've added a lot of goals to their team. However, in the Premier League, it hasn't worked out for him in terms of scoring a lot. He's only scored 5. He's actually got more assists than he has goals, with 6. I never expected Kai Havertz to really hit the ground running straight away. I think there was a lot of pressure and hype surrounding him, and I could just have that feeling that he wasn't going to live up to that hype straight away. So that one so far hasn't really really blown me away. Ben Chilwell has been good and he was one of the favourites under Frank Lampard. However, Thomas Tuchel has brought Marcos Alonso back into the team. Hakim Ziyech has been in and out of the team. Edouard Mendy has of course made a big difference in goal, especially compared to Kepa. I think it's fair to say with the names that they brought in, we expected a lot. When these transfers were made, we saw it as the best business in the Premier League. However, with their performances, I can only put it in good, not blown away. Crystal Palace made a few signings. They brought in Eze from the Championship, as well as Butland, Ferguson, Klein, Batshuayi and Mateta in January. While Ferguson has been hit by injury, he hasn't played 1 minute of Premier League football. Batshuayi they bring back to the club to score goals, however he's only been able to score 2. Overall, their transfer business hasn't been great, however Eze is the one that stands out. We've seen what he can bring to the team with the flair and the skill, and one of his goals was a fantastic solo run, dribbling past players and finishing, showing his ability. So Eze's been good, however I can only put them in average, need to see more due to their overall business. Last summer, Everton made some transfers that really surprised people, and we got to see the impact of Carlo Ancelotti at the club, bringing in former players like Alan and Rodriguez into the midfield, as well as Decore. Ben Godfrey was another one that joined, as well as a goalkeeper, Olsen, and then they signed Josh King in January as well. At the beginning of the season, there was a lot of focus on Everton to see how these signings performed under Ancelotti. Rodriguez really made an impact straight away, as well as Alan in the midfield. Since then, they've been in and out of the team and injuries have affected them. However, when they are in the starting 11, you can see the difference that they make. Ben Godfrey has shown some really good signs in this Everton team after a season of experience last season with Norwich. No Everton player has won more tackles than Alan, and no Everton player has more key passes than James Rodriguez. I don't think much else needs to be said there. For me, Everton go into the best business. Their signings have impacted the team, impacted the starting 11, and got them into the conversation of European football. Fulham signed many players last summer, which was much needed for Scott Parker. In their first match against Arsenal, they were really poor and the starting 11 just wasn't up to scratch for the Premier League. However, they added players that, as we've seen throughout the season, have really suited what Scott Parker has wanted to do. Attack-minded, forward-thinking players. The fullbacks that they signed, they got 3 of them: Robinson, Tete and Aina. Anthony Robinson is the one that stands out there for me. Ademola Lookman was a brilliant signing. He's been great to watch in the Premier League. He's got 74 successful dribbles, which is the 5th most in the Premier League, and he's got the most key passes for Fulham with 55. The new centre-backs they signed as well have really impressed people: Tosin and Anderson. Some really astute signings that have suited Scott Parker's style of play, and even though they're not in a great position in the Premier League right now, they've given them a chance to stay in the Premier League. Without these signings, Fulham wouldn't be on the points that they're on right now. Instead, Scott Parker would be using a load of players that just didn't suit what he wanted to do. So for me, Fulham go into the good tier. Leeds United, for me, I felt was a really difficult one to assess. They signed Rodrigo as their record signing, Llorente, Rafinha, Costa, Robin Koch, Meslier and Harrison. The one that stands out there for me, and I think a lot of people would agree, is Rafinha. I've really liked watching him as a player. I think the goalkeeper's been really good, Meslier. For a 21-year-old goalkeeper in the Premier League for the first time, it's impressive. Diego Llorente scored his first goal for the club against Liverpool very recently, and Jack Harrison, they were able to keep him on loan again for another season, and he has also been impressive. For where Leeds are in the Premier League right now, it can be easy to forget that it is their first season back in the Premier League, so I think for that reason, I am going to put them into the best business. Like I say, that was a tough one to decide, but for a newly promoted team, they've done well with these signings. Leicester City just signed a few players: Wesley Fofana, Castagne and Senchakunda, and even though they have signed so few players, I think Wesley Fofana has been one of the best signings in the Premier League. A young centre-back that has shown really good potential in his first Premier League season. Timothy Castagne started the season off really brightly with a goal and 2 assists in his first 3 matches. Since then though, he hasn't had another goal contribution and he's been in and out of the team with a few injuries, but I still think he's a good signing and a fullback which suits their team. So even though they haven't brought in too many players, the ones that they have brought in have done well. So for Leicester City, I'm going to put them into the good tier. Liverpool didn't make too many signings either. They brought in Diogo Jota from Wolves as well as Thiago. They also brought in the left back Timicus and Davies in January. Diogo Jota has been a good signing for them with 8 Premier League goals and 4 in the Champions League. He spent quite a while out with injury, so maybe next season he can score quite a few more. And Thiago has just been a tidy player, especially with his passing. He's got the second most accurate long balls to Liverpool with 87 and a 77% success rate. That is a really impressive stat, and even though he's not blown me away, I think he's still been good. So for that reason, Liverpool I'm going to put into the good tier as well. I think the only thing keeping them away from average is the goals that Jota has brought to the team. Manchester City bolstered their defence with Ruben Dias and Nathan Ake. As well as that, they brought in in a young winger in Ferran Torres. Ruben Dias is another one of the better signings that we've seen in the Premier League recently. When City went on that 21-game win streak, their defence was superb and Dias was a big part of that. So I think he is a big reason as to why Man City are in the position they are in the Premier League right now. Nathan Ake's been out of the season for quite a while, so we can't really review that transfer that much. I think he can still play a great part in this City defence, and the same goes with Ferran Torres in the attack. We haven't seen too much output from him so far, but there's nothing to say that he's been a bad signing. I think Dias is really carrying their transfer window at this point because I'm going to put them into good. I think he's been that influential on the City defence that they have to go into that tier. Manchester United last summer were able to bring in quite a few players here and there: Van de Beek, Diallo, Telles, Pellistri and Cavani. Understandably, people thought Van de Beek was going to play a lot more football for Man United this season. He's played just over 1,100 minutes for them, but he has shown now and again what he can bring to the team with his movement, creating space for others. The player who's had the most impact on the team has been Edinson Cavani. He recently got to 10 goals for Manchester United and he's been in good form lately. He's brought to the team exactly what Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has needed in a striker. With the movement, the goal scoring instinct and headed goals, he's got 5 headed goals, which is the second most in the Premier League. Telles hasn't had an impact on the team himself, however Luke Shaw's been really good and maybe he's had an impact on his performances. And the youngster Amad Diallo, well, he's going to slowly come into the team like Greenwood did. So with Manchester United making some clever signings, I'm going to put them into the good but not blown away tier. Newcastle United actually impressed me with the signings that they made, with Callum Wilson, Lewis, Hendrick and Fraser joining the club. Callum Wilson, a proven goal scorer in the Premier League, and he'd done really well at Bournemouth, especially the link up with Ryan Fraser. And Callum Wilson, well, he has actually been good. He's got 10 goals and 5 assists. However, the other name that we mentioned there, Ryan Fraser, hasn't been so brilliant and we haven't seen that great link up between the two of them. No goals for Ryan Fraser, but 2 assists. If St. Maximin hadn't picked up injuries, I think we would have seen a lot better from Jamal Lewis. Those two at the beginning of the season were linking up really well. And Jeff Hendrick, I don't think that one's gone down too well. Many times I've seen Newcastle fans hoping that he's not in the starting 11. So Callum Wilson's been good, he's played his part, but the rest of them haven't been as good. So for that reason, I can only put Newcastle into the average tier. For Sheffield United, I don't really think we need to say too much about this one. Rhian Brewster says it all. Just over £20 million spent on him and he hasn't even scored a goal for Sheffield United. He is a striker, by the way. I think just for that we can say that Sheffield United go into the disappointing tier. They also got Ramsdale, Burke, Lowe, Bogle, Ampadu. Recently I named Ampadu as my underrated player at Sheffield United and I think he's got a good future in the Premier League. It's been stated a lot that Sheffield United have lost games due to the odd goal, and with a striker who could finish a few more chances, they may be on quite a few more points than they're on right now. Southampton made a few signings with Diallo, Walker-Peters signed permanently, Salisu, Walcott, and then the January signing of Minamino. Probably the most impressive transfer in these is Walker-Peters. Turning that from a loan to a permanent transfer was important as he gives them a lot at right back. Other than that, I think their other signings have been quite average. Minamino joined in January and scored 3 goals and he's probably given them the most out of anyone. Walcott gave something at the beginning of the season but nothing too much since then, so Southampton for me go into the average tier. Now Tottenham was probably the most difficult one to figure out. They brought in Lo Celso, Reguilon, Doherty, Højbjerg, Rodon, Vinicius, Hart and Gareth Bale. I've talked about Højbjerg quite a bit on this channel, but he's been one of the better players in the Premier League this season. He was really signed as a Jose Mourinho player. It'll be really interesting to see how he gets on under a different manager and whether he keeps up the same numbers in a different system. The most tackles won in the Premier League this season, is that just down to Mourinho's defensive style of play? Well, I think for sure it's definitely had an influence on the amount of tackles that he's made. Reguilon was a signing that I really liked and I think he has been good for them, but for example someone like Lo Celso in the midfield, who I think has technical quality, we maybe haven't been able to see the best of him under Jose Mourinho. Now he's left, maybe under a different manager he can thrive, so maybe this choice is a bit debatable. I'm going to put Tottenham into the good tier because Højbjerg and Reguilon I think have been their better signings, but I think other signings that they've made, for example like Lo Celso, we can see him play really good under a different manager and maybe in the near future we see him as a better signing for the club. So they're in good because they've signed one of the best performing midfielders in the league, but also because I think the players that they have signed suit Tottenham Hotspur, but just not Jose Mourinho. West Brom signed quite a lot of players, some that were under Bilic and some that were under Sam Allardyce when he tried to revamp the team. The most impressive players here have been Mateus Pereira, he's been really good, and Conor Gallagher has probably been their player of the season. He's only on loan from Chelsea, but he's been really impressive. And then the signings made under Sam Allardyce, it seems like they're now having an impact, but it might just be a little bit too late for West Brom to survive in the Premier League now. With Sam Allardyce in charge, anything anything can happen in a relegation battle, but in terms of their transfers, I'm going to put them in average. At West Ham, when the transfer window was over, I think fans felt quite underwhelmed with the business that they did. But looking back now in April at the business that they did, it's been superb, with Soucek and Sofal coming from Slavia Prague. Craig Dawson was on loan from Watford, but that's now been made permanent. Saeed Benrahma joining from Brentford. He hasn't really been a starter in the team and instead a rotation player. And then the January signing that we're all talking about at the moment, Jesse Lingard on loan from Manchester United. Let's waste no time in putting West Ham into the top tier, the best business. Thomas Soucek is a perfect David Moyes player. Sofal at right back gives them so much in defence and attack. And then Jesse Lingard has been able to give them that extra edge in the second half of the season to really get them into those Champions League spots. They're still there competing. They can still finish in the top 4. Whether that means anything or not right now, we don't really know. But without a doubt, West Ham have made some really good transfers that have completely transformed the team. At Wolves, we saw the arrivals of Fabio Silva, Semedo, Hoover, Marcel, Vitinha, Ait-Nouri, and then the January arrival of Willian Jose. Nelson Semedo has been impressive, probably the most out of all of them. Fabio Silva is still a very young striker adapting to England, and Willian Jose coming in to replace Jimenez just for the meantime hasn't really made too much of an impact either. So for that reason, I can really only put Wolves into the average tier. Let me know what you think of this tier list. Do you agree with the teams that I've put in the best business? Let me know in the comments. I recommend that you don't miss out on future videos. Subscribe to Route 1 and like the video if you did enjoy.